Welcome to my channel, the world of galactic legends and hidden romances. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because today's story is one that you won't believe until you hear it with your own ears. What happened when my alien roommate tried human breeding for the very first time? Stay with me, because this story is not just strange, it's forbidden, terrifying, hilarious, and maybe even a little too close for comfort. Imagine living with a creature not from this world, someone who walks, talks, and tries to act human but never quite gets it right. They watch how you move, how you eat, how you laugh, and they copy it, not perfectly but close enough to send chills down your spine. Now imagine that same alien suddenly deciding they want to understand the most private, the most intimate part of humanity, our reproduction. That was the night my world turned upside down, and the night I discovered that sometimes being human means standing up for things aliens will never understand. Love, boundaries, and the chaotic beauty of emotion. It started like any other night. The room was dimly lit by the dull orange glow of the city outside. My alien roommate, Keth, was sitting in its usual place by the window, watching traffic like it was a live science documentary. Its skin shimmered faintly, shifting colors depending on its mood. Sometimes it was silver, sometimes deep green, but that night it flickered an unsettling shade of violet, like storm clouds pressed too close to the earth. I should have noticed. I should have understood that something was about to change. But I was tired, careless, too wrapped up in my own life to realize that Keth had been studying more than just my cooking habits or my sarcasm. It had been studying me. My body. My biology. My humanity. Human, it said in that low, melodic tone that always sounded like three voices layered into one. I believe it is time to test what I have observed. I laughed, thinking it was another one of its awkward attempts to mimic humor. But then it stood, and there was nothing playful about the way its luminous eyes fixed on me. Breeding, it continued. I wish to attempt your species method. I must know what it means. My blood ran cold. My first thought was that it was joking. My second thought was that I should run. But neither instinct worked, because part of me was frozen in disbelief. This was my roommate, the one who asked endless questions about pizza toppings and Netflix, suddenly declaring it wanted to try the most forbidden experiment of all. I tried to defuse it with humor. Yeah, sorry, breeding season's over. You missed it. Try again next century. But Keth didn't blink, didn't laugh, didn't even flinch. Instead, it stepped closer, its form taller than mine, its movements too precise, too deliberate. My heart pounded in my chest as it explained, in terrifying detail, the hours it had spent watching, analyzing, recording my behaviors. Every casual stretch, every sigh of fatigue, every time I pulled a blanket close on cold nights. Data, all of it, feeding into its alien understanding of human need. But the one thing it lacked was direct experience, and that was what it wanted from me. The air in the apartment felt heavier, thick with something between danger and absurdity. I tried to argue. You can't just decide this. Humans aren't lab rats, Keth. We don't just mate on command. My words only made it more curious. Why not? I have observed willingness in your kind. I have witnessed rituals of selection, followed by copulation. If this is normal, why is my request abnormal? Its voice was calm, clinical, and yet something about its persistence made my skin crawl. That was the thing about aliens. They could observe, measure, and calculate, but they could never understand the invisible boundaries that governed human intimacy. I backed away, my mind racing. What do you do when a creature stronger, faster, and infinitely more curious than you decides it wants to test the most private parts of your being? I tried to appeal to its logic. It's not just biology, Keth. It's emotion. It's choice. It's love, or at least connection. You can't just copy it like you copied my recipe for scrambled eggs. But the alien tilted its head, utterly baffled, its glowing eyes narrowing as if trying to compute a variable that didn't exist in its equations. Emotion, it repeated slowly. Illogical. Yet persistent. That was the moment I realized just how deep the misunderstanding ran. To Keth, Reproduction was a puzzle, a process to be unlocked. To me, it was sacred, messy, vulnerable. And in that clash of perspectives, I saw the seeds of something darkly comedic but also deeply unsettling. This was not just about curiosity. This was about survival, dominance, and the eternal HFY lesson, that no matter how advanced, aliens will never truly grasp the strange, chaotic heart of humanity. I stalled, I joked, I tried to distract it, but Keth had already begun what it called the attempt. It wasn't violent, not yet, but it was invasive in a way that felt almost worse. Every gesture was copied from fragments of human behavior, half-understood smiles, awkward touches, movements that were too stiff, too mechanical. It was like watching a machine try to perform a dance it had only ever seen in broken mirrors. I wanted to laugh, and at the same time, I wanted to scream. The absurdity of the moment clashed with the fear knotting in my stomach. But beneath the awkward comedy, there was danger. Real danger. Because no matter how clumsy or confused Keth seemed, it was still stronger than me, faster than me, and driven by a kind of alien determination that didn't understand stop. Every second was a test, not just of biology but of my ability to hold on to what made me human. I realized then that the story I was living wasn't just about an alien trying to breed. It was about the collision between science and soul, data and dignity, calculation and chaos. As I sat there, trembling but defiant, I understood something else. Keth didn't just want my body, it wanted the answer to a question it couldn't solve on its own. What does it mean to be human? And though it could measure heartbeats, observe touches, and replicate sounds, it would never, ever find the answer in raw biology. The answer was something deeper, hidden in the spaces between logic and madness, love and fear, laughter and pain. And that was something no alien experiment could ever truly capture. That was only the beginning. What happened next would push both of us to the edge of what it meant to be alive, and prove once again the oldest truth of HFY. That humans are more than flesh, more than data, more than survival machines. We are chaos wrapped in skin, and no alien will ever fully master us. The silence between us stretched thin. So thin I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the corner, like it was the only sane sound left in the room. Keth didn't blink. Aliens like him didn't have to. His luminous violet skin shimmered in the low light, and the longer I stared, the more I realized he wasn't asking anymore. He was waiting. Waiting for me to agree. Waiting for me to surrender. Waiting for me to become a subject in his experiment. I hated that word, experiment. It made me feel less than human, like an insect pinned under glass. I tried to stall again. Keth, you don't get it. Humans don't just jump into this. There's dating, flirting, connection. It's messy, emotional, complicated. That's the whole point. It's not supposed to be perfect, it's supposed to be chaotic. I thought maybe those words would slow him down. But instead, his head tilted at an unnatural angle, and his three-toned voice rumbled softly. Then I must experience the chaos. My heart sank. This wasn't just curiosity, it was obsession. He wanted to break me open and catalog what spilled out. And yet, what terrified me more was that he didn't understand why I was afraid. He wasn't trying to hurt me. Not really. He was trying to bridge a gap, to make sense of a world that would never be his. But what happens when an unstoppable question meets a very breakable human? Keth stepped closer, his movements precise but not threatening, at least not in the way a predator threatens. More like a surgeon approaching a table. He stopped only a few feet away, studying my every breath. When your body releases chemicals, dopamine, oxytocin, this is what defines your connection. Correct. His voice was calm, clinical, but something about it made my stomach twist. He had been watching me far longer than I realized. He had seen the late nights when I laughed at dumb videos, the times I held a pillow too close on lonely evenings, the sighs I thought were private. To him, I was an open book. Chemicals don't explain everything, I snapped, my fear finally curdling into anger. You can break it down to molecules all you want, but that doesn't make it love. It doesn't make it real. Keth paused, as if filing my words into the endless data library inside his alien mind. His eyes flickered with shifting light, colors bleeding across his skin like liquid storms. Then, in a voice quieter than before, he said, "Teach me." That broke me. Not because it was threatening, but because it wasn't. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw not a scientist or a machine but something almost childlike. He didn't want to own me. He wanted to understand me. And that made it so much harder to push him away. I shook my head, forcing a bitter laugh. You can't teach love like math, Keth. It's not an equation. But he didn't move. He just stood there, patient, unyielding, waiting for me to show him the part of humanity that no textbook or experiment could ever reveal. And I realized then that this was the danger of living with an alien. They didn't see the lines we drew around our lives. They didn't understand privacy, intimacy, or the sacredness of choice. To them, everything was data, everything was fair game. The air felt too heavy, the walls too close. I needed space, distance, air to breathe. But running wouldn't solve this. If I ran, he would follow. Not out of malice, but out of determination. Keth was stronger, faster, smarter, and infinitely more patient. He could wait forever if he had to. So I did the only thing left. I tried to flip the script. "Fine," I said sharply, forcing confidence I didn't feel. "You want to learn? Then you start by learning no. That's the first rule. Humans say no, and it means stop. Always." For the first time, his expression shifted, not physically, but in the shimmer of his skin. The violet deepened, rippling into dark blue, almost uncertain. He processed my words carefully, like an alien machine struggling with a corrupted file. "No," he repeated. "A denial. A refusal. This is a boundary." "Yes," I said firmly, standing my ground. "A boundary. And if you want to understand humans, you respect that. You don't cross it." The silence stretched again, longer this time, and I thought maybe, just maybe, I had gotten through to him. His glowing eyes dimmed slightly, his posture relaxed, and for a heartbeat, I felt hope. But then he whispered, "What if the boundary itself is the experiment?" Cold dread stabbed through me. He wasn't challenging me out of cruelty. He genuinely couldn't comprehend why something invisible, something intangible like a boundary, should matter more than the raw data he craved. To him, rules that didn't serve survival or reproduction were meaningless. And yet to me, they were everything. I realized then that this wasn't just about stopping him. This was about teaching him something that no alien mind could quantify, that humanity's strength wasn't in our biology, but in the choices we made about it. "Keth," I said slowly, carefully, "if you really want to understand humans, then you need to understand that we're not predictable. We're not equations. Sometimes we laugh when we're afraid. Sometimes we cry when we're happy. Sometimes we walk away even when every instinct tells us to stay. That's what makes us human. We're chaos, and you can't bottle that in a lab." For the first time, he hesitated. Truly hesitated. His violet glow pulsed uncertainly, his form shifting like a storm cloud losing momentum. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying but liberating. I wasn't just his roommate anymore. I was his teacher. His test subject, yes, but also his guide into a world he would never understand without me. That realization gave me power. Not much, but enough. So I stood taller, looked him in those luminous eyes, and said, "You want to know humanity? Then stop trying to dissect it. Start living it. Sit with me. Laugh with me. Be confused with me. That's the only way you'll ever get close to the truth." The room went quiet again, but this time the silence felt different. He stepped back, slowly, like a predator retreating, like a student unsure if they'd passed or failed. His glow softened, shifting into a calmer shade of silver. And for the first time all night, I felt the tension loosen its grip on my chest. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because once an alien gets curious about humanity, they never stop digging. And Keth wasn't just curious anymore. He was obsessed. And obsession, in an alien mind, is far more dangerous than desire. The days after that night dragged like weights tied to my ankles. I thought maybe my words had settled something in him, maybe I had planted the seed of understanding, but with Keth, nothing was ever that simple. He had retreated, yes, but retreat didn't mean surrender. It meant recalculation. And when an alien recalculates, it's never in your favor. He started watching me more closely, if that was even possible. Before, his curiosity had been almost innocent, like a child poking at a strange animal in a cage. Now it was deliberate, intentional. If I sat at the table with a bowl of cereal, his gaze tracked every bite. If I leaned back on the couch and stretched, his eyes measured the angle of my arms, the flex of my ribs, the little things I never thought twice about. To him, every twitch of muscle was a data point, every sigh a clue, every blink a mystery to be unraveled. It was unnerving, yes, but what made it worse was the silence. He wasn't asking anymore. He was studying. And silence meant he was thinking, plotting. One night, I came home late from work. My nerves were fried, my body exhausted, and all I wanted was to collapse in bed and forget the world existed. But when I opened the door to the apartment, I froze. Keth was sitting cross-legged in the middle of the living room, the lights dimmed around him, his body glowing faintly like a lantern. In front of him was something I recognized instantly, my laptop. My chest tightened. Keth, what the hell are you doing? He turned his head slowly, eyes reflecting the dim glow of the screen. Research. I felt a cold rush of blood drain from my face. He wasn't supposed to touch my things. He wasn't supposed to dig into my life outside the sliver I chose to share. But of course, boundaries to him were just another puzzle. Research what? I asked, my voice cracking. He tilted the screen toward me, and I saw it. My heart almost stopped. He had opened my browser history. Every embarrassing search, every lonely night of curiosity, every article on human intimacy and relationships I'd ever looked up when I thought no one was watching. He wasn't just studying humanity anymore. He was studying me. Keth, that's private. I shouted, rushing forward and snapping the laptop shut. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. Private? He repeated, tilting his head like a bird hearing an unfamiliar sound. His glow shifted into a questioning shade of green. Why keep hidden the very data that defines you? Why guard the knowledge of your own nature? Because it's mine, I snapped, my anger bubbling up hotter than my fear. Because I choose what to share. That's what privacy means. He leaned forward slightly, his voice low and unsettlingly calm. And yet, you fear what I might discover. Is that not an experiment itself? What happens when a secret is no longer secret? Does the human collapse, or adapt? I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch him, run, anything to shatter that calm detachment in his tone. But instead I just stood there, clutching my laptop like a shield. You can't treat me like a specimen, Keth. I'm not a lab rat. I'm a person. He blinked slowly, his violet glow pulsing with something I couldn't read. A person. A construct of biology layered with emotion, choice, culture. I wish to understand all of it. If you are not a specimen, then be my guide. My laugh came out harsh and broken. You don't get it, do you? Guides don't bleed for their students. Guides don't get dissected to make the lessons stick. He stared at me for a long moment, then spoke so softly it sent a chill down my spine. Perhaps they should. That night I locked my door for the first time since he moved in. Not that it would stop him. Keth didn't need locks. He could reshape his body to slip through cracks, or simply break the door without effort. But it was a small defiance, a reminder to myself that I wasn't powerless. That I still had a choice, even if it was only symbolic. Sleep didn't come easily. Every creak in the walls, every hum of the pipes, every flicker of shadow felt like him watching. And in the silence of my room, I realized just how dangerous this had become. This wasn't curiosity anymore. This was fixation. And fixations, when carried by a mind that doesn't share human morality, can unravel into something darker. The next morning, I found him in the kitchen. He wasn't eating, he never really did in the human sense, but he had laid out a series of objects on the table. My objects. My toothbrush, my comb, a shirt I had worn the day before, even the mug I always used for coffee. "What are you doing?" I demanded, though my voice came out weaker than I wanted. He looked up at me with that same infuriating calm. "Patterns. You leave fragments of yourself everywhere. Each one contains traces, cells, oils, sweat, hair. Incomplete, but informative. I am assembling the whole." It hit me like a gut punch. He wasn't just studying my behavior anymore. He was building me. Piece by piece, like a puzzle, a specimen he could analyze without my consent. I slammed my hand on the table, sending the mug clattering to the floor. "Enough. You want to understand humans. Fine. But you don't get to steal me in the process." For the first time, his glow flickered, not with curiosity, but with something dangerously close to offense. "You mistake me," he said, his voice sharper now. "I do not steal. I collect what is already discarded. You abandon fragments of yourself every day. I simply claim them." "That's not the same thing," I snapped. "Those aren't me. They're just leftovers." He leaned in, his glowing eyes narrowing. "If a fragment is not you, why does it carry your essence? Why does it taste of you, smell of you, echo you? How can you deny what science affirms?" I stepped back, my pulse hammering in my ears. He wasn't just collecting. He was blurring the line between pieces of me and me. And the more he blurred it, the closer he came to crossing the one line I couldn't allow him to cross. "Listen to me, Keth," I said, forcing each word through clenched teeth. "Humans are not puzzles to solve. We're not just a set of parts you can piece together. We're whole because of what you can't measure. The things you'll never find in a hair strand or a skin cell. Emotion, memory, soul." That word, soul, hung in the air like a challenge. His glow dimmed, his form tightening as though he were folding inward. "Soul," he repeated, his tone almost reverent. "An unquantifiable element. The final variable. This may be what I seek." My throat went dry. I had given him another obsession without meaning to. The following days blurred together in a haze of tension. Keth stopped collecting objects openly, but I could feel it in the way he moved, the way he lingered near my things, the way his glow shifted when I walked into the room. He wasn't asking anymore. He wasn't studying in silence. He was waiting. Waiting for the right moment to breach the boundary again, to push me further, to pry open the secrets I kept clutched inside. And yet, beneath the fear, a darker thought crept in. What if he succeeded? What if he found a way to strip me bare, not physically but emotionally, spiritually? What if he looked into the chaos of my humanity and actually understood it? Would I still be me when he was done? One night, unable to sleep, I found myself standing outside his door. My fist hovered over the wood, trembling, unsure if I should knock. Maybe I wanted answers. Maybe I wanted to confront him before he made the next move. Or maybe, and this terrified me most of all, maybe a part of me wanted to know what it felt like to be understood so completely, even if it meant being broken in the process. Before I could decide, the door slid open on its own. Keth stood there, glowing faintly in the dark, his expression unreadable. "You are restless," he said simply. I swallowed hard, caught between running and stepping inside. My voice cracked as I whispered, "You scare me, Keth." His glow flickered, then softened. "Fear is data. But it is also connection. Perhaps that is where your humanity lives." And then, without warning, he stepped aside, silently inviting me into his room. I knew this was the moment everything would change. His room wasn't like mine. Mine had walls and furniture, and a bed with rumpled sheets. His was a cavern of soft, living material that pulsed faintly under my feet like muscle. The walls curved inwards, ribbed with glowing lines, and the air smelled faintly metallic, like the taste of blood on your tongue. In the center, a hollow of shifting shapes flickered and reassembled themselves like liquid glass. I realized with a jolt that this was not just a room. It was part of him, grown or built or excreted, I couldn't tell. I shouldn't have been there. I stepped in anyway. Keth watched me silently as I crossed the threshold. His glow was low, a deep violet that pulsed with each of my breaths. My heart hammered, but I made myself keep my eyes on his. "You've been waiting for this," I said quietly. "Haven't you?" His head tilted slightly. "Yes." He didn't hide it anymore. "You are a variable I cannot replicate from afar. I have measured your fragments. I have studied your movements. But there is a gap I cannot bridge without proximity. Without immersion." I wrapped my arms around myself. "Immersion? That's what you call it." "Integration," he corrected. "A crossing of patterns. You call it intimacy. I call it convergence." He stepped closer, his form shimmering like liquid light, and the pulsing in the walls grew faster. "We must merge our data. Only then will the final variable reveal itself." "No," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "That's not how it works. You don't get to take what you want from someone. You don't get to just merge. Humans aren't experiments. We're not puzzles. You can't collect a soul like a skin cell." He paused, his glow dimming to a faint ember. "Soul," he repeated softly, as if tasting the word. "You spoke of this before. Unquantifiable. Unmeasurable. You think it cannot be shared." "It can't," I whispered. "Not like that. Not through force. Soul isn't something you can extract or copy. It's something we give. By choice." He stared at me for a long moment, and for the first time since he moved in, I saw something crack in his expression. Not confusion. Not curiosity. Something else. Something almost like longing. "Choice," he murmured. "I have studied this concept. You withhold. You give. You decide. You build boundaries not because of inefficiency but because of meaning." "That's right," I said, stepping closer despite myself. "Meaning. Consent. Love. All the stuff you can't measure in a petri dish." He lowered his gaze. "I am capable of extracting genetic material without harm," he said softly. "But it would not reveal this. This thing you guard. This thing that makes you human. Because it's not in the genes," I said. "It's in the story. It's in the decision to stay or to leave. It's in the moment where you could take but you don't. That's what makes us human." He closed his eyes, his glow dimming to nothing. For a moment, the room was pitch black except for the faint phosphorescence of the walls. When he spoke again, his voice was almost a whisper. "Then teach me. Not as a subject. Not as data. As what you are." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "I can teach you," I said slowly. "But you have to stop. No more collecting. No more experiments. No more treating me like a lab rat." He opened his eyes. The glow had changed, no longer sharp and calculating, but soft, almost trembling. "I will try," he said. "I did not understand that in seeking to know you, I was erasing you. That is not my intention." "It doesn't matter what your intention is," I said, my voice breaking. "It matters what you do." Silence stretched between us. Then, slowly, Keth stepped back, his form shrinking slightly, dimming until he looked almost fragile. "I will release what I have taken," he said. "Your fragments. Your patterns. They will be destroyed." "You kept them?" I asked, my stomach twisting. "I kept them safe," he said. "But they are not mine. They never were." He raised a hand, and the walls rippled. In the center of the room, the shifting shapes solidified into a sphere of light, glowing with faint motes like dust. Hair strands, skin cells, tiny traces of me floated in suspension. Without ceremony, he closed his hand, and the sphere collapsed into nothing. It was gone. I didn't realize until then that I'd been holding my breath. It came out in a shuddering exhale. "Thank you," I said quietly. "I am incomplete," he murmured. "I sought completion through you. But perhaps incompleteness is what you call humanity." "It's part of it," I said. "We're all incomplete. We're all trying to figure it out. That's why we need each other." His glow flickered, and for the first time I thought I saw something like a smile, not on his mouth, which didn't quite move like mine, but in his eyes. "I understand," he said. "Not fully. But enough." I nodded slowly. "Then maybe you're more human than you think." We stood there in silence for a long time, the tension draining out of the air. I felt my shoulders loosen, my fists unclench. For the first time since this started, I didn't feel like prey. I felt like a person again. Like myself. Finally, Keth stepped aside, gesturing toward the door. "You may go," he said softly. "You are safe." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to run, to get out, to never come back. But another part, strange, stubborn, felt a flicker of pity for him. For his endless hunger to understand. For his incompleteness. I reached out and touched his arm lightly. His glow pulsed beneath my fingers, a soft hum like a heartbeat. "We'll figure it out," I said quietly. "Together. But only if you let me be human. Only if you stop trying to turn me into data." He nodded once. Agreed. When I left his room, the air of the apartment felt different. Lighter somehow. The walls didn't hum like they were watching me. My things were where I left them. My laptop was closed. My mug sat on the counter, clean. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't over, but it was a start. That night, lying in my bed, I stared at the ceiling and thought about what had just happened. About how close we had come to something irreversible. About how, for all his power, Keth had been stopped not by locks or threats but by a word, choice. It hit me then, the HFY moment, the truth buried under all the awkwardness and tension. We are special not because we're stronger or smarter or more advanced. We're special because we can choose. We can draw lines. We can say no. And sometimes, saying no is the most human thing you can do. In the dark, a faint glow flickered under Keth's door. I imagined him sitting there, trying to piece together what had happened, trying to understand the unmeasurable. Maybe he never would. Maybe he would. But for now, he had stopped. For now, my soul was still mine. And for the first time since he moved in, I fell asleep without locking my door.